Hi everybody, welcome to IS 326's module on migration in Africa. I'm Bill Smith, the director of the Martin Institute at the University of Idaho. I've been with you at least once before this semester to talk about intergovernmental organizations, and I get to come back and talk to you about sports later in the semester. But today's about migration, and in this case, we'll be doing both the IM part of migration, that's immigration, the process of people arriving to a place, and the EM part of emigration, or people leaving a place. With Africa not being just a unitary country, but 53 member states, then you have all kinds of large patterns, regional patterns, things happening in different former colonial sections. The pattern that looks like with the former British colonies is different than what it looks like in the former French colonies sometimes, or the Portuguese colonies, etc. And so there's all kinds of variations. So what I'm going to try and do is talk about big picture sorts of topics. It's an important question. There is a perception that Africa is a continent on the move and that people are leaving in droves, when in reality there's a relatively small number of people who move each year. I should take that a small percentage of the total residents of Africa moving each year, whereas the number may seem large. Certainly, it's a case that we see images such as, oh, didn't mean to give you all of me. Sorry about that. Let's give you none of me. There we go. That there is a case where the images of what it looks like in the media is one that is significant. And perhaps it's driven not just by the media, but by people in Western Europe who worry about the numbers of folks who are arriving and talk about it because the numbers are larger than they used to be. And it worries them. I used to live in a part of Spain called the Canary Islands. It's off the coast of Morocco. I lived there before the waves of sub-Saharan migration started passing through Spain on its way to the rest of Europe. And they used to kind of tease me as an American, sort of representing all Americans and the folks who were afraid of illegal immigration in the Americas and why would we worry about it. And they don't say that anymore because of the numbers that come. But if you see the images and the headlines, it may not occur to you that only on an average annual basis, only about 3.5% of Africa is actually on the move. And the majority of those 3.5% are staying within Africa as they move. So we'll look at some of those things as we go. Patterns of movement. It may surprise you, but maybe not, since we've been talking about all the ways that perceptions get blown up in this class and different topics. But African migration is a lot like others, that essentially people move from a place of lesser opportunity or lesser security to a place of more opportunity or more security. And that's why the pattern is different across the region. One of the things that I get to do each year is take students to New York City as part of the National Model United Nations trip and experience that we have in international studies. And we're studying usually a particular country each year. Often it's an African country. And I remember several conversations with diplomats from African states who were talking about their people moving and their concern, but they were often referencing other African states that had more opportunities or more stability than their own. Or they were referencing the people that they themselves were hosting. If we'll get to the example of Uganda here this semester, we've studied Uganda a couple of times as part of the Model UN, and the Ugandans are heroic in their approach to hosting refugees, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But these are three truisms, okay, across not just Africa but across the world. So if you're in Nicaragua and you're looking for opportunities, you might go to Costa Rica because it offers more than what you have. If you're in Peru or Ecuador, you might go to Chile instead of coming to the United States because Chile offers you more opportunities than your own country. It's a pattern of moving from less opportunity to more. Now, that's not the exclusive reason people leave, right? We're talking about different push and pull factors that we won't get into here, but people participate in networks. They go where they're valued. They get opportunities and they go. But the general rule of thumb is less opportunity to more opportunity. And as a whole, with Africa being less developed than we wish it would be, and it certainly is falling short of its potential, there are movements that go outside of the continent. So here you have migration routes in Africa and within Africa, because a lot of that migration is within it. I'm not going to talk much about these two maps. Rather, I'm going to focus on this information up here in the top. So this is where I get the number of 3.5%. There's about, in 2016, there are about 1.2, 1.3 billion people in Africa, and only 41.5 million people were part of the migration processes. So if 46% migrated within Africa, 41% left the continent, 13% of people from outside, that could be diasporic movements, that would be folks who were African or of African origin moving back, or people moving in from other parts of the world. That's also possible and actually probable to have happened. That's about 3.4%. So do keep in mind that the movement is of people within Africa, within African networks. And you can see there are places where, with the bolder arrows, that there are larger numbers of migrants moving out of. So Somalia with its instability, Sudan with its instability, some instability in in Western Africa. This is numbers from 2017. The map is from 2016. So you're going to include things like from the Ebola pandemic in West Africa with people leaving, that generates changes in the flow. But overall, if you look at this, this is a mess. You may have to push pause and look at it. But I've taken all the countries in Africa and put them on this simple slide. I know it's not simple, but this slide that has the net migration rates for 2021. So this is data from the CAA World Factbook. And if you've never dived into the data that's in there on all kinds of topics about people and migration and governments and resources, etc., you can sort by country, you can sort by topic, you can sort by Africa and dive into data. But what tries to show is movements of people on a net basis. So that would mean that, see these down here in the corner, the countries that have net zero rates. It doesn't mean that no one is emigrating or immigrating. And that means for every emigrant, there's an immigrant. So the net is zero. Plus one minus one equals zero. And so you get these different numbers of more or less. Now, sometimes the very high numbers are showing something peculiar. So in South Sudan, even though they've got some issues with, they have issues with civil war and instability that ebbs and flows. And so one year you'll have a massive negative migration rate from South Sudan, and then things will calm down and people will be able to move back home, and then you'll have a positive migration rate. 22 out of 1,000 people is a huge rate. That's the second highest in the world, and that's a returnee flow. What you want to look at for people who have opportunities someplace are the ones that are down in Gabon, Botswana, Cote d'Ivoire, etc., where people are arriving to take advantage of opportunities. Similar to that is the ones of -1 to 1,000. Those are more normal flows, and then you have the very high ones. But if you want to dive more into that, then I do recommend to the CA World Factbook because it's an interesting way to look at this kind of information. But these are talking about voluntary migrants, and there's a secondary pattern in Africa of refugees and internally displaced persons. So this is an issue throughout several parts of Africa. Now, these are not the largest flows. So the sources of refugees number here on the right side of the slide shows some very disturbing numbers. So you'll see here that refugees, these are people who had to flee because of a verified, widely recognized threat to their persons. 2.3 million doesn't seem to jibe with the number on the previous slide about the plus 22 migration rate per thousand, and this is because the number of refugees declined. It's still a very high number, but it is going down. Whereas Somalia, another one of those big arrows that we looked at, and some of these others are significant. What I want to focus on also, though, is the places that host and what they do. So these are countries that welcome the people who are threatened into their countries and host them or house them. So the country in the world that has the most refugees that they're hosting is Turkey. It's the first time they've been at the top. But if you look at their neighbors, which are Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and some other places like that, that they've been receiving a lot of refugees. Jordan has a lot of refugees. For similar kinds of reasons. In the African continent, it's Uganda. Uganda is positioned in kind of the northern part, inland. It's a landlocked state, northern part of eastern Africa. So it's right by South Sudan, shares a border. It's right by Somalia. It shares a border with Congo. It's right by the Central African Republic. It's right by all of those. So they are frequent hosts. And so it's not just the numbers they host, but they've got some very progressive policies in how to treat refugees who are often in most countries isolated in camps. This is a picture of a camp in Uganda, a camp run by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. But they give them rights. They give refugees rights in Uganda to work, to earn a living, to go to school, and that's not very common. And so Uganda is recognized as a global leader in how to host them. IDPs is a related issue. IDPs are internally displaced persons. Those are folks who had to flee for very similar reasons due to warfare or threat of persecution or other kinds of instability, but they didn't cross an international border. They're still within the same boundary. And so there's 5.5 million of those folks in Congo alone. So these people do not appear on this list, right? They're not migrants. They're not part of this flow, and they're not certainly part of this. They are part of this. And so sometimes when you see these images, it's not just that people are leaving for opportunities, but leaving because they're desperate. And so there's a connection between these images and these numbers, more so than these images and these numbers, okay, that we want to pay attention to. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a more positive part of the story, which would be the African Union formally trying to engage with their diasporic population. So just because there's only 3.5% of Africans migrating in a given year, it doesn't mean that there's not lots of Africans abroad. And so this is a pattern that goes way back, long before the time period that this class looks at, but starts with the transatlantic slave trade into and of the Americas. So when you see the numbers of people where the African diaspora is at, and much of the top 10, 8 of the top 10 are in the Americas, where slave populations were captured and taken in bondage to the Americas. And so the diaspora population simply refers to people of African descent that are somewhere in the world. And there are lots more places than the 10 that are on here. These are just the ones showing you those numbers. So what Africa is trying to do is to consciously engage with their diasporic populations and use them to help build networks within the country, perhaps the country of their origin, or they're not so concerned perhaps with the country of the origin, but the continent as a whole, to appeal to the Pan-Africanism and get them back and get them engaged. So 45 countries within the African Union have specific diasporic community engagement plans. And a lot of them work through the diaspora division here of the African Union, but some of them are more culture-based or national-based, that gather people and try and get them to go. Other folks who have been in the United States or elsewhere for generations, perhaps tens of generations, and don't trace back a specific lineage to an extant African country, can be motivated more generally to invest in the continent. Both the diasporic community and the migrant community are sources of income through remittances. So remittances is just the monies that migrants send back to the continent. And so this is not just an African phenomenon, it's all over the place. But if you look at these things, ODA is official development assistant, overseas development assistant. That would be like the United States or the U.S. Agency for International Development giving money. Remittances is sent by individuals back. FDI is foreign direct investment. So that might be more like diasporic communities investing in Africa. So we're looking at remittances here, and if you look at the sheer number, it's almost the same amount as development. That it's a really significant and important source of income. This chart was written in 2020 when it was clear that the COVID pandemic was going to have an impact. But we found that numbers didn't go down as much as feared because people in these situations continue to send money back to Africa. So even as ODA and FDI and other things declined, that remittances stayed pretty steady. And so what you get is first something that's feared. Feared is that there's brain drain, that talented people are leaving Africa and moving to the West. That's one of those reasons why people leave from places of less opportunity to more opportunity. And so in Kenya, for example, they will point out that there are almost twice as many doctors of Kenyan heritage or nationality working abroad as there are Kenyan doctors working in Kenya. And that's a concern. Other people, including the African Union, talk about brain circulation and networks of people that get developed to reinvest back in Africa, not just in remittances, but to build networks that directly give back to Africa. And you may have heard of the ICPSD. That's the NGO based here in the Palouse that our friend Roe is affiliated with, that does all kinds of programming back in Africa. So that's what you're looking at, as sort of that circulation. I've read reports that suggest that 20% of your populations are perhaps a decent target number to have abroad of your talented people, but no more than that because otherwise the networks don't have anything to take advantage of. Final thoughts. I got 9 seconds. It's a big place. It's a complicated place. There's lots of Africans doing lots of different things all over the continent.